the radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Friday night. I hope you had a great week. Looking forward to a fantastic weekend. All right. Yeah, Jennifer flowers. I don't know if they're real or not. I think they're plastic, but they're flowers. A little bit of color to the set. Let's see. Yeah, today we're going to talk about woke stuff. A bunch of woke stuff. We're going to talk about wokeism in healthcare and corporate boardrooms. We're going to talk about Uber shortages. I don't know if you've noticed, but it's impossible to get an Uber these days, and when you do get one, you get surge pricing. So we'll talk about that a little bit, and we'll see what else. There's a bunch of stuff. For some reason, over the last 2 days, I've had just a million different stuff, stories, ideas of what we could be talking about on the shows. Sometimes I feel like, what am I going to say today? And then other times it's like, how am I going to limit what I say today? So a ton of stuff. Wokeism is out of control, as you know, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But first, the really good news, and I mean this seriously, the good news is, I don't know if you saw the news item yesterday, I think it was yesterday, maybe it was Wednesday, that Boom is the supersonic developing company that is developing a supersonic jet, passenger jet, that would fly 3.5 hours from New York to London. I'm not sure what LA to Tokyo would be, but significantly reduced and dramatically increased the convenience of flying across the oceans. Blake Scholes is the CEO. I hope to have Blake Scholes on one of my shows soon to do an interview. But Boom yesterday got an order for United Airlines for 15 supersonic jets. So I guess there is a lot of conviction that the regulators are going to approve this, that Boom will actually develop a viable technology that is viable not just technologically, in terms that it will fly, but in terms that it will fly with the regulators, which is obviously crucial. So I think that's incredible. It'll just change the dynamics of flying to Europe or flying to Asia or flying around the world. So far, I think Boom is focused on transatlantic and trans-Pacific flights because there's still some issue about sonic boom flying, let's say, over America from East Coast to West Coast. So it'll actually be faster to go to London than it will be to go from LA to New York. So that would be thrilling. I mean, it's still going to be a while. It's still, I think, close to a decade away before we see it used in commercial flight. But it's just exciting to get validation from one of the top airlines in the country. I'm just sad that it's not American Airlines. God, I hope this doesn't mean I have to switch to flying United. Maybe I can just switch to flying United on the supersonic jet, but that would be exciting. Best friend Hank says, I thought we were going to build super speed rail. Yeah, the government was going to build super speed rail. How's that going? I think the segment between nowhere in California to nowhere in California is under construction at a cost of tens of billions of dollars. No, this is a private company, private enterprise, the marketplace. All right, so as usual, you can use the Super Chat feature to ask questions, to make comments, and generally to support the show. And you can do so, as I said, through the super chat. The higher the dollar amount, the faster I'll answer the question, the more time I'll devote to the question. So, $20 buys you priority, but $100 buys you instant priority. It buys you much more focus. The goal generally for these shows is $400 a show. So hopefully we have some people here who maybe didn't participate last time, because we raised a lot of money last time, but who have the willingness and the ability to get us to $400 or more as part of the show today. So don't forget to use the super chat feature to support the show and to ask you questions. Okay, let's jump in with wokeism, in particular critical race theory and its application in woke kind of culture. Now we talked about this, and actually Barry Weiss, I've talked about Barry Weiss a number of times. She's the former New York Times journalist who has launched her own Substack, who not only publishes her own articles in it, but also has other people. So she acts like an editor for other people who publish on her Substack. And she has made a big focus of her work to expose wokeism, critical race theory, far-left ideology across different areas of American life. And I think a few weeks ago, or a few shows ago, we talked about how this was affecting education. We talked about the parent who was withdrawing his child from a private school, Dalton's in New York City, a very expensive private school, where they were teaching the child that she was guilty because she was white. And we discussed the teachers. They were being penalized because they objected to some of what was being taught. So we kind of know this is in the sphere of education, and it's getting deeper and deeper, and more schools adopting variations on this wokeism into the schools and teaching critical race theory in schools. There have been a number of states now that have outlawed critical race theory. I think Florida, Texas, or Florida hasn't yet, but is about to. Texas and maybe a couple of others, red states that have outlawed critical race theory. But it's there, and it's in the private schools, and it's spreading. Today, there were a number of articles, again, in Barry Weiss's Substack. So I highly recommend barryweiss.substack.com. Barry is spelled B-A-R-I, Weiss, W-E-I-S-S.substack.com. Her articles are all good, interesting. Even when you disagree with them, she's a good writer, and she brings out interesting ideas. And today she's focused on the prevalence of wokeism in medicine, among doctors, researchers, medical schools, medical students, the material taught to medical students. And it is truly alarming to think that your doctor is now inspired, motivated, influenced by these ideas, and then it might affect your treatment, depending on your skin color. That your treatment, the priority of the treatment, the nature of the treatment, the attitude of the doctor, might now be affected by your skin color. Not by, just by color, skin. That racism now is the standard, not just being taught in education, but being taught in medical schools and being expected in terms of behavior from young and older doctors. And that it's also affecting the kind of medical research that is being done and what is being published in terms of medical research. Now, all of this, I think, kind of one of the most shocking examples of what is being taught is, this was published on Barry Weiss's website today, she published some text, but she published a recording of a lecture given by a psychiatrist and psychoanalyst by the name of Aruna Kilanani, called The Psychopathetic Problem of the White Mind. The psychopathetic problem of the white mind. Now, this wasn't given at some obscure university, in some obscure, gender studies or critical racial theory class. No. This was given at Yale School of Medicine in the Department of Child Studies Center. And it was given full credit to medical students. The psychopathic problem of the white mind. Now imagine, just replace white with black or any other color, and maybe you can see the beginnings of a problem. As soon as you start categorizing people by race, as soon as you identify a mind of a racial group, in my view, you are a racist. You are practicing racism. But once you get into the content of the speech, it really gets bizarre. Now, I'll get to the content in a second, but here's some of what was said with the learning objectives. Now, let me just tell you who the target audience is. The target audience for the speech are trainees in child psychiatry, psychology and social work, faculty, clinicians, and scientists. Trainees in child psychiatry. The learning objectives. At the conclusion of this activity, participants would be able to, quote, set up white people's absence of empathy towards black rage as a problem. That sounds racist. Replace white and black, flip them. Understand how racism is part of the mind, that white mind that arose during colonialism with a series of lies around violence. So racism is part of the white mind. You have no choice about it. Third objective, understand how white people are psychologically dependent on black rage. God, I guess I'm white. I mean, I've never thought myself as a white person. It's not a category I would ever put myself in. But I guess if I look at my skin, it's kind of whitish, pinkish, whitish. So, I am psychologically dependent on black rage. I didn't know this. This is a revelation to me. But this is what is being taught. That a whole group, a collective, is dependent psychologically on another group, on the other group's rage. What about blacks who don't have rage? I don't know. That's too complicated a question. That would imply there's such a thing as individuals, and God forbid we do that. Here's some quotes from the talk. It's 6 minutes, 45 seconds, and I won't give you all the timestamps. Quote, this is the cost of talking to white people at all. The cost of your own life as they suck you dry. There are no good apples out there. White people make my blood boil. I, for one, am offended, even though I don't consider myself white, but I guess she considers me white. My existence, my very presence, makes her blood boil. Well, I feel sorry for her. But defining people based on their race, based on the color of their skin, based on immutable characteristics is racism. And this is disgusting. There are no good apples there. There are no good individuals. They're white, therefore they're not good. Quote, I had fantasies of unloading a revolver into the head of any white person that got in my way, burying their body, and wiping my bloody hands as I walked away relatively guiltless, with a bounce in my step, like I did the world a fucking favor. Ooh, I said the F word. Somebody owes me like $50, I think. Can you believe this stuff? This is a lecture at Yale. Quote, white people are out of their minds, and they have been for a long time. Quote, we are now in a psychological predicament because white people feel that we are bullying them when we bring up race. I don't think you're bullying us when you bring up race. They feel that we should be thanking them for all they have done for us. They are confused, and so are we. We keep forgetting that directly talking about race is a waste of our breath. We are asking a demented, violent predator who thinks that they are a saint or a superhero to accept responsibility. It ain't gonna happen. They have 5 holes in their brain. It's like banging your head against a brick wall. It's just like sort of not a good idea. Don't even talk to white people because they're so beyond it. They're so, what is it? Confused. Well, right? They're so demented. And of course, they're a violent predator that there's no point in talking to them. And finally, we need to remember that directly talking about race to white people is useless because they are the wrong level of conversation. Addressing racism assumes that white people can see and process what we are talking about. They can't. That's why they sound demented. They don't even know they have a mask on. White people think it's their actual face. We need to get to know the mask, unquote. So she knows me better than I do. Reason cannot penetrate white people, assuming they're arguing from the perspective of reason. There's no conversation to be had. Now, what is the only means of change once you give up on talking, on conversation, on conviction, on reason, on discussion? What is all that it's left? How does one deal? How does one deal with a demented, violent predator when there's no point in talking to them? Well, the only thing left to them is force. The only thing left to them is force. And that's what they're setting up. The systemic racism. There's nobody to talk to. They're too demented to know that they are racists. We got to put them in camps. We got to use brute force. We got to use violence against them. It's the only way we can assert ourselves. We got to take their stuff. We got to put them in their place. Now, I don't think that's the way it's going to play out. I don't think that's the way it's going to play out at all. But this is what she's advocating. Now, again, Barry Weiss actually says in the article, she says, I thought this might be a scam, like somebody put this up as a pretend. But no, I mean, you can go to this woman's Twitter feed. She's proud of this talk. Yale, in its wisdom, decided not to make this talk public. And it's behind some firewall. Only students can access it, I guess. But this woman is arguing that it should be made public. She wants it public. And if you look at her Twitter feed, you can see that this is real. This stuff is real. It's this was not given by some wacky activists in some, I don't know, commune in some weird place. This was given to medical students at the Yale School of Medicine, one of the best schools of medicine probably in the world. This is what they're being taught. Elsewhere from Barry Weiss comes, whoops, where is this? Sorry, too many windows, there it is. Comes the story of a group of doctors, very similar to the groups of teachers that we talked about a few weeks ago. Best friend Hank, thank you for paying up for, you promised that if I said the F word, you would pay up, and he's paid up, so good for him. No super chat questions. We've gone 21 minutes and not a single question, I don't think. Oh, one. Ryan asked a question. Sorry. Ryan asked a question. One super chat question. That's a record. You guys are questioned out or you're broke. Well, at least best friend Hank is not broke. We know that. At least not yet. So you remember when we talked about the schools, Barry Weiss described these groups of parents who would meet anonymously through Zoom to discuss the problems at their school and discuss their objections. But they wouldn't go public because they were afraid, and they did it in ways that nobody would know who they were. And when they interviewed with Barry Weiss, they wouldn't give their names because they didn't want it known that they were objecting to what the school was doing because they were afraid. Well, it turns out the same thing is happening with doctors. There are groups of doctors, at least there's one group of doctors, that meet regularly on Zoom to support each other with regard to what they see as the influence of woke culture at their universities, at their hospitals, in their practices. Now, just to be clear, this is not some group of Texas, I don't know, conservative physicians. These are what you would consider leftists. They are voters of the Democratic Party. They consider themselves progressive. They are part of what would broadly be termed the left. But they are horrified by what is going on in the world, in their world right now. And they feel like they need a support group to handle it. So they tell stories of doctors who've been reported to their departments for criticizing residents for being late. And the resident who was late then complains that they think it was an act of terrorism. Sorry, terrorism. I don't know where terrorism came in. That they think it was an act of racism. That being told you're late is racism. Maybe because the person who was late was a minority, and just because they were criticized. It must be because of their race. Doctors has stopped giving feedback to trainees, honest feedback, for fear of retaliation. Because they're worried. They say the wrong thing to the wrong person of the wrong race, they will be hammered by their bosses. God, I don't think my dad would have ever. My dad is a doctor and taught at a medical school. Was known among his students for the harsh criticism. He's considered the toughest teacher in the medical school. He would nail these trainees, and yet now you can't. You have to be careful what you say. Some of these doctors say that there's a purge underway. I'm quoting from the article it's not by Barry Weiss. It's in Barry Weiss Substack. It's by Jesse Singal. No, it's not Jesse Singal. What am I talking about? It's Katie something. I don't know why they don't put the family name. Katie Herzog. This is by Katie Herzog. So there's a purge underway in the world of medicine based on ideas of critical race theory, based on ideas of, wokish ideas. Now think about this. What this means is doctors are not going to get as good a training as they could get because their teachers are afraid to give them the kind of feedback that would make them good doctors. This is true certainly of minority students, but it's probably true of everybody because what happens is it's not like the teacher says, well, I'm not going to give harsh criticism to minorities. What they typically say is, I'm just not going to give harsh criticism. That way, it solves the problem. I don't give the criticism. Imagine a generation of doctors who was never criticized, who was never told that they were late. What kind of doctors are they going to be? Imagine a generation of doctors more concerned about their hurt feelings by being criticized or by being criticized for being late. More interested in their hurt feelings than in whether they know the topic, whether they can treat the patient. What's the quality of healthcare going to be? When this is what drives doctors, when this is the motivation. It's scary, guys. It's scary to think that in the future, doctors are going to be more interested in their emotions than in facts, in your skin color than in what disease you might have, in whether they are towing the party line, whether they are politically correct, or whether they are doing good diagnosis and good work. I'm quoting one of the doctors who said, people are afraid to speak honestly. This is an immigrant from the USSR. It's like back to the USSR, where you would only speak to ones you trust. If they're, right? When a doctor does speak up against some of these woke behaviors, the reaction is savage. You better be tenured and you better have thick skin, he says. This affects even research. This even affects research. There's a study published last year in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. The study was covered all over the news, and the headlines were, quote, "Black newborns more likely to die when looked after by white doctors." Another headline, "The lack of black doctors is killing black babies." Or, "Black babies more likely to survive when cared for by black doctors." Wow, you might say. This means that racism works. That segregating people by race might be good for them. But it turns out that despite these amazing headlines, the study was dramatically flawed, methodologically poor. According to many doctors, the conclusions do not come out of the actual data, that it's amateurish, and that there is a large number of doctors who think this paper is basically worthless. Nobody will speak up against it, or very few people will speak up against it. Nobody has retracted the paper, even though the research is flawed. It's published. Other research that supports these kind of conclusions is published. We'll see what happens to articles that don't support these kind of conclusions. So, for example, Norman Wang, possibly Asian, but it shouldn't and doesn't matter. Norman Wang, at the University of Pittsburgh, cardiologist, published a paper in the Journal of the American Heart Association. The paper analyzed and criticized diversity initiatives in cardiology. He looked at 50 years of data, and he argued that affirmative action and other diversity initiatives failed to meaningfully increase the percentage of blacks and Hispanic clinicians in this field or to improve patient outcomes. And it was time to stop pretending that by hiring and promoting clinicians based on their race, anything good was happening. So he criticized the idea of long-term academic solutions and excellence should not be sacrificed, or not criticized, he promoted the idea, should not be sacrificed for short-term demographic optics. Ultimately, all who aspire to a profession in medicine and cardiology must be assessed as individuals on the basis of their personal merits, not their racial or ethnic identities. Now, I like Norman Wang. I've never met him, but just based on that sentence, I like him. What was the response? Well, Sharon Hayes, a cardiologist at Mayo Clinic, implored colleagues to rise up. The fact that this is published in our journal, it's a journal of cardiology, should both enrage and activate all of us. She added the hashtag retract racists. It's racist to say that affirmative action hasn't worked. It's racist to say doctors should be treated as individuals, should be promoted based on individual merit, should be hired based on individual ability. That, she says, is racist. The editor of the Journal of American Heart Association, I think my father actually published in that journal, issued an apology. And the journal retracted the work over Wang's objections. There was no suggestion of error in the paper. No suggestion there was anything wrong with the paper. Just that publishing it supposedly was antithetical to his and his journal's values. Right? Now, this is a journal that never retracts papers unless data is being shown to be falsified or wrong, or there's real problems empirically or otherwise with the paper itself. The American Heart Association, which I know my father's part of, which publishes the journal, issued a statement denouncing Wang's paper and promising an investigation. So Wang is now suing both the AHA and the University of Pittsburgh for defamation. Good for him. I hope he wins. And this is nuts. Calling somebody a racist because he's advocating for individualism. He's advocating for what made the West, what made America, America, what made the profession of medicine even possible. The idea of individualism, the idea of ability, the idea of merit. Now, that's not the only journal. Here's one more. The Journal of the American Medical Association released a podcast that was hosted by its deputy journal, or then deputy journal. And in this podcast, he said things like, personally, I think taking racism out of the conversation will help. Many of us are offended by the concept that we are racists. Basically saying what I'm saying. Just the fact that I'm white doesn't make me a racist. Massive uproar. 9,000 signatures in a petition. He gets removed as deputy journal editor. The editor gets kicked out. They apologize, saying that they apologize for the inaccurate, offensive, hurtful, and inconsistent presentation that has nothing to do with the standards of the journal. This is just... Now, the good news here is that this has led to some backlash. So there are some sane people within these associations. And some of these doctors wrote that there is a general feeling that the firing of the editors involved in the podcast was perhaps precipitous, possibly a blot on free speech, and also possibly an example of reverse discrimination. Possibly. Grow some balls. And this is why they win. This is why the woke people win. They have balls. They don't mind saying that they think they're in the right. Oh, Jesus. Oh, okay. John Wayne, you had me worried there for a minute in the chat. It worked. Whatever effect you were trying to create, it worked. The left, and this is true in economics, this is true in every field, the left has the moral high ground. The left knows exactly what it wants. The left says, fire them. They're bad. They're racist. They're evil. Get rid of them. The right says, the better people say, well, we think you overdid it. You think you maybe exaggerated a little bit. It's possibly a blot. It's possibly an example of reverse. Let's not get too, we don't want to make any definitive statements. We certainly don't want to get into a moral argument with you. The left understands, and I've said this about AOC, and I've said this about the left broadly, they understand the power of ethics. They understand the power of morality. They understand the power of altruism. They understand the power that altruism has on people, and therefore if they present themselves as victims, the power that has, if they present whatever remedy they have as helping the victims, helping the poor, helping the oppressed, helping the minorities, the power, the moral power that has, and they don't fear using that moral authority that they think they have. And this is why the better people cannot win, unless we embrace a morality of individualism, a morality that advocates for something, and that declares the critical race theorists, the wokeists, they are the racists. They are the racists. They're the ones who should be embarrassed and ashamed of their positions, their views, their ideas. We should be declaring without any compromise that their ideas are evil. And this is not to deny racism exists. I've been saying this for a long time. I get criticized on the chat for this. But yes, there is racism against blacks and brown people in America. There's even anti-Semitism. And there are examples of it that these doctors present of certain tests and things that are truly racist that need to be eliminated. That needs to be eliminated. But you do that from the perspective of a philosophy of individualism, a morality of individualism. You do that with the moral high ground on your side as an individualist who is getting rid of all forms of racism, all forms of categorizing people based on race. So beware of young doctors. Beware of doctors being trained today. Beware of the 9,000 doctors who wrote the petition to get the editors fired. What they are promoting, there's more stories in this Barry Weiss article that I encourage you to read. What they're promoting is placing emotion, the emotion of the minority student, the emotion of the minority doctor, above the facts of reality, above proper treatment of healthcare. There's stories about young doctors who won't treat conservatives, who won't treat people who they think they disagree with. That they as doctors should tell their patients what is right and what is wrong, not just in medicine, but in other areas of life. And this is being pushed by a diversity industry that pushes the stuff. We talked about, white fragility and the scam of white fragility and everything else. You've got now, for example, a group called White Coats for Black Lives, formed by medical students in 2014. 75 chapters all over the United States in medical schools. They publish a racial justice report card that grades medical schools, not based on the quality of providing medical education, but on their critical race theory, justice perspective. And they make specific demands of institutions. For example, one of the demands is that hospitals and medical schools not work with local law enforcement. Now imagine what would happen if emergency rooms stopped working with police. It would be chaos. It would be a disaster for everybody involved. And on what basis would you do that? So, sorry, just doing something here. Well, I mean, we can hope that everybody embraces the morality of individualism. But that's essentially what we're fighting for. The essential fight is a fight over the morality of individualism. That's what the world rejects, and that's what we stand for. All right, let's see if there's anything else here. Yeah, I mean, you're seeing young physicians applying anti-racist principles and choosing how they allocate their time and which patients they choose to work with. COVID-19 cases where doctors said, we'll treat the minorities first because this one guy says, I'm not going to treat that white guy. I'm going to treat the person of color instead because whatever happens to the white guy, he probably deserves it. Now, that's a direct consequence of the kind of education they're getting. Right? So, racism, the leftist form of racism, it now dominates our culture. And it dominates the most important institutions within our culture. At the cultural level, I don't think it's filtered down to day-to-day stuff. But it has an influence on educational institutions. It now is having an influence on our doctors and our medical institutions. Clearly has impact in many of our political institutions. Now, I think there's going to be a backlash. And I think the backlash could be quite brutal. I don't think wokeism will ever become popular. I don't think wokeism will ever become the rule of the land. People will reject it. The question is what they reject it for. I think all this does is increase white racism, if you will. I think all this does is create resentment, creates tribal warfare, create tribalism. Both sides are becoming more and more tribal, less and less rational. It's popular among certain elites. It's a tiny fraction of the population. It's not even most of the left. It's a fraction of the left, never mind a fraction of the entire population. But the majority will rebel against this. And when they do, it will be particularly ugly. And the clash of all these racist tribal forces is going to be a disaster. So I encourage you to go over and subscribe to Barry Weiss's Substack. Give us some financial support. I think she deserves it. And this is one of the fights that we have to engage in. And by the way, Barry Weiss is not exactly a raving capitalist. She's certainly not an objectivist. She's certainly not even a free marketer. And yet, she, who is probably of the center, originally center left, maybe a little center right, is the one fighting the fight. The one fighting the fight. All right, let's see. We got some super chat questions. Let me just mention on Saturday at 8 p.m. East Coast time, I will be debating Vosh. People have asked me if I'm prepared. I don't prepare for these debates. I've got too many of them. I can't prepare for all the debates that I'm engaged in. So we'll see. We'll see if unprepared Iran can deal with Vosh. It'll be at 8 p.m. I'll be streaming it on my channel, so you can watch it right here on the Iran Book Show. The debate will be on Discord, on a particular channel on Discord. Am I ready? I'm always ready. Somebody also asked about doing back-to-back debates. I'm doing a debate a week now. I'm not putting them up yet on my channel. I'll put them up on my channel in periods where I'm not doing a lot of live shows. So I put up the debate with a Marxist. I did a debate with Zubi on tradition. I just did a debate with, I forget her name, on religion. And I'm doing a debate this coming Tuesday. That's all on ARC, Ayn Rand Center, UK. But on my channel, I'll put them up over time. I'm not going to be putting them up as they come out, but it's going to be over time. So I'm doing at least one debate a week. Some of these debates are going to be, some weeks we'll have more than one debate. So for example, this week, I did the debate on Tuesday. I'm doing the debate with Vosh on Saturday. And you know, I'll do as many debates as I'm invited to do. Is basically my premise, right? And if I get paid, even better, right? That's what I should say. I'll do as many debates as I get paid to do. I think some of you know that I will be debating, what is his name? Richard Wolff, the Marxist economist, at the University of Pennsylvania in October. So that's another debate. So I find it weird. Where are all the people that used to criticize me for not debating leftists? And I've been debating leftists for the last decade at least. And yet, it doesn't matter. You know, it doesn't matter. All right, I see there's some super chat questions, so we'll take a few, and then we'll go to the next topic. Let's see. All right, the concept that some whites might be concerned about being genocided was called out as racist within the last week or two. I think the context was immigration replacement. Does the Barry Weiss story alter your position? No. I think that the chance of white people being genocided is very, very, very close to zero. I think, it's much more likely that it is non-whites that are genocided by whites when whites get angry enough from all this BS. Because the white tribe is bigger, has more resources, more powerful. If that's how we map out the tribes, right? And it's the wackier wokeism gets, the less seriously people are going to take it. The more it's going to become a laughing stock. You know? So no, I mean, this idea of white genocide is complete and utter nonsense. It's not happening, and it's not going to happen. That's not the problem. The problem is what are whites going to do to themselves and to other people. That's what's gonna be ugly is the authoritarianism that we're heading towards to combat all this nonsense. Not nonsense, evil. All this evil. You know, it's always in the name of combating evil that evil arises, right? Communism arose to combat the evil of the Tsar. I mean, where it actually succeeded was to combat the evil of the Tsar. Nazism arose to combat the evil of socialism, to combat communism, the fear of communism. Fascism in Italy arose for fear of the anarchists and for fear of complete mayhem and complete destruction from primarily the left. And I think you'll see authoritarian rise. Yeah, the Ayatollah rose. The Ayatollah in Iran rose. Thank you, Coke. In Iran rose to combat the authoritarian nature and the disaster, the evil that was the Shah. And authoritarianism in America will arise to combat things like wokeism. It'll be a response to, a counter to. And a lot of good people will support it out of fear and resentment of the woke. Fear, I'm going to do a show on fear. Fear is an incredibly powerful emotion. It's ultimately the emotion that all authoritarians use. Fear of the other side. And that's why you shouldn't fear wokeism. You should fight wokeism. Fear is not the right attitude to take. It's understand it, expose it, and fight it with a positive alternative. Not with an equally evil ideology. Not with a less equal but evil ideology. But fight it with the moral high ground. Fight it with a true alternative. Fight collectivism with individualism, racism with individualism. Fight altruism with egoism. All right, we'll do a couple of other $20 super chat questions. We're at like 241. So all we need is $150. 3 people chipping in $50 each, and we've made Alejandrina's day. And she gets to save a little bit more money to come to the United States to work in. Who offered somebody? Wasn't she offered a job at a restaurant? Yeah, I mean, we could turn $400 into $1,000, like happened the other night. But reaching 400 would make Alejandrina happy. And I think you all want to make Alejandrina happy. How am I guilting you guys? Is guilt good? All right, a couple more $20 super chats. Hi, Iran. I'm really enjoying Fauda. Good. I think I like it more than the Bureau. Yeah, it's grittier and more believable. Definitely more intense, more at the edge of your seat. The Bureau is more cerebral. I think in many ways the Bureau is more realistic and actually more believable. I think Fauda is a little over the top. But Fauda is more intense. Fauda gets you hooked. Fauda you can't stay away from. Would you do a review of each season and get into parallels in the real world and objective morality? I mean, I have to watch it again, which I might do anyway, just out of fun. But let me just say that one of the things about the show is that it tries not to take too strong a political stand, particularly in season 1, with regard to the Israeli-Palestinian questions. But it deals with the issues very effectively. So with the issues of morality, of internal struggle, with what people are doing, with violence and so on. I think it's a very, very effective show in that sense. But yeah, I might do, maybe when next season comes out, I'll do like a review of the whole show, including the new season. Can you do more videos critiquing Sam Seder about healthcare and other arguments? He seems like the one of the theist, the most influential on YouTube of the progressive left. Sure, that's a good idea. I'll put it up here with my good ideas. But yes, I can do more giving the counter argument to the left argument about healthcare is a good idea. Anyway, and Sam said it's probably a good way to do it. One more $20 question here. Is the debate around the new pronouns for trans individuals an instance of borderline cases applied to gender? How can objectivist epistemology answer this? I mean, objectivist epistemology recognizes, I think, only 2 genders. Now, you might transition to another gender, and then we should use the pronouns of the new gender in which you transitioned into. But it should be I, me, mine. They is some weird collectivization and a negation of the fact that you're an individual. It's a victory of collectivism and tribalism. And what does it even mean? Well, it means you are not you. You are they. You are a member of a group. It's a negation of epistemology. It's a negation of facts. So I don't think it's borderline in terms of epistemology. You are who you are. Now, you might be confused. And there might be certain biological confusions, but you have to, at the end of the day, you're either this or that, or lean this way or lean that way. And if you're neither, then maybe we need a third pronoun, but it can't be they. It can't be they. All right. So that's the $20 questions. All right, let's do one more topic, and then we'll do these other questions. But don't forget, we're still short about $140. Well, 135 now. From one God to another. We're not God either. Sorry, Apollo, but God's omniscient and omnipotent. I'm neither. We're not gods. We're human beings, and we have the capacity to be a rational animal. We have a capacity to be rational. We have the capacity to be moral. We have the capacity to earn pride. Right. And so, best friend Frank, have you raised the bid now? The F word for $140? Is that how I'm reading what you're saying there? All right, let's see. Yes, Uber. Have you guys noticed that Uber prices have gone up significantly because surge pricing is more prevalent? Because Theme asked a $20 question. I'm looking for it. I must have missed it somehow. Can you just type in the question into the chat, and I'll answer it. I'll believe you that I believe you that you gave $20, so I'll answer it. Shali, thank you. Ryan, at least admit that you are heroic in your convictions. I'm not sure who you're talking. Who needs to admit that? So Uber is very difficult to get. It used to be in Puerto Rico here in San Juan. You went onto the street, you pressed the thing, within a minute or two you got an Uber. They were unbelievably cheap. Unbelievably cheap. Now, you can go 30 minutes, an hour with no Ubers. And when you do get an Uber, you get it like 400% because of surge pricing. Why? What has happened to Uber? What is causing Uber drivers not to show up to work for themselves using their own automobile? Why? Why does it take so long? Well, here's the thing. It used to be that Uber drivers were not eligible for unemployment because they were not employees. They were contractors. But under the new regime, both under Trump and under Biden, Uber drivers were included in the new regime of unemployment insurance that the federal government is providing. So Uber drivers are getting, I think it's $800 in some places, a month to stay home. Let's say they earn $1,000 driving the Uber car. Well, but then they lose the $800. So they're really only driving for $200. Is it worth getting the car out, all the expense, and all the time and the hassle and everything else for $200 versus just staying home and collecting the $800? I mean, the fact is that if you pay people not to work, they won't work. If you pay people to stay home, they'll stay home. And we're seeing this directly, the laws of economics working with Uber. as some of these unemployment insurance plans are phased out over the weeks, months to come in different states, you will start seeing many more Uber drivers on the streets. Suddenly, it'll become more profitable to drive a car than to sit at home. By the way, some of you who might not be collecting unemployment insurance and who might have some spare time on the side might consider becoming Uber drivers, just like in the evenings or whatever, just because it's a pretty good way to make some extra money. And prices right now are pretty high because of the surge pricing. So the laws of economics hold. But I would expect more people to go out there and moonlight. And probably that's the people who are actually doing Uber. And not the full-time Uber drivers, they're getting unemployment, but the moonlighters, people doing it in addition to a regular job. I don't need a ride. I've got a car here in Puerto Rico, but a lot of people don't buy cars in Puerto Rico because it used to be that Uber was so easy that it didn't make sense to have a car. I use Uber when I travel in different cities, so I'm hoping that by the time I travel, all this nonsense will be gone. But we will see. We will see. Just a little lesson in economics. If you pay people to stay at home, your Uber driver is not going to show up. Not going to show up. Ryan, thank you. And thank you for thanking Ali. All right, Corey. Fantastic. Corey stepped in with about $50 American, I think that is. So we were at $385.99. So looks like we're going to make Alejandrina's goal of $400. I think it's pretty safe to say Alejandrina is going to be happy tonight. That's good. All right, Corey asks, or thought, just a quick thought. I think the attack on gender is one of the final stages of an attack on identity itself. If it's not stopped, I believe it will spread to everything else that humans give names to, subjectivism through and through. I think that's right, but think about it even broader and connect this up to the race stuff that we talked about. What this fundamentally is an attack on is the attack on the individual. On the individual's identity, on the individual's mind, on individual characteristics. And it's all motivated by one thing. It's all motivated by egalitarianism. I think Corey is in Australia. Yes. He contributes with Australian dollars. It's the tall poppy syndrome, chopping down the tall poppies, but taken to its logical extreme. In a sense, by being individuals, each one of us is a tall poppy relative to others. The only way to truly cut down all the tall poppies is to eliminate anything that makes us unique as individuals, to eliminate anything that makes us different as individuals. It's to make us all the same. And if we can't all be the same, then those who are perceived to be members of a group, because individuals don't matter, so it's all about groups. Those who are perceived to be members of a group that has power or that is perceived to have some advantage need to be put down. And not just down to the level of everybody else, but in order to compensate for the fact that they had excess, quote, power in the past, they need to be put down below every other group. They need to be made inferior. They need to feel guilty. And this is whether it's with respect to race, whether it's with respect to gender. And ultimately, if we can annihilate the concept of gender, now the concept of race I don't think is legitimate to begin with, but the concept of gender clearly is. If we can make us all non-gender, but more importantly, if we can make us all non-individual, it's easier to deal with us. It's easier to control us. It's easier to put us down. It's easiest to get us into the world of Ayn Rand's anthem, where there is no I, there is only we. So yeah, absolutely. It's about the attack on identity, which is an attack on the individual, which the individual is, I mean, that's where identity lies. It lies in an individual. It's an attempt to negate individual characteristics, the individual as an entity. In the name of what? In the name of the oppressed. In the name of the sufferers, in the name of the historically, oppressed. In the name of the different. In the name of any minority. Except the only minority that counts, which is the individual. Let's see. Yeah. I mean, this is the ultimate. And of course, my view is, again, that this kind of attack will not be successful. That egalitarianism cannot win. That, as Jordan Peterson says, hierarchies always prevail. The question is, in trying to defeat egalitarianism, what kind of hierarchical society do we embrace? And I fear that that kind of hierarchical society is a society of some form of authoritarianism that places some people above other people and eliminates all of our freedoms. Okay, OMG Puppies says, read Palmieri Mussolini Mein Kampf, struck by how socialist fascism was. Of course. I mean, Mussolini was a rising star in the Socialist Party when he left because he thought they were incompetent. He thought they couldn't gain power. And he left in order to and basically establish fascism. Struck by how socialist fascism was, but not Marxist. The state harmonizes class relations, yes. Explicit denunciation of individualism, just distribution, a competitive communism, yes. Two collectivistic ideologies. One that collectivizes across class, and the other that collectivizes across nationality and ultimately across race and ethnicity. But originally Mussolini wasn't a racist. It was across nations, the greatness of Italy, the heirs of the Roman Empire. Nation replaces class, race replaces class. These are the ideologies, but they're all tribalist, collectivist ideologies. All right, do you think Biden knows that regulations and such smother business expansion? Yeah, of course. At some level. I don't think he holds that consciously. I think he buys into all the leftist economists' rationalizations of, no, it actually increases competition, no, it protects consumers, it creates new opportunities for new businesses. So I think what these politicians do is, deep down, at some level, just at the edge of consciousness, they know it. But then they use the rationalizations, like people like Paul Krugman, and other pseudo-economists provide them to push that back into the subconscious and not hold it. And what they hold instead are the rationalizations. You can answer this later. Now, these are the non-$20 Super Chat questions. This is why, even though they were asked very early on, I'm only answering them now because they're not $20. The $20 got priority. And by the way, Ali is really, really asking for one last $20 question so she can get a good night's rest. With $389.29, one $20 question ends the night with a smile for Ali. So $11 would do that, but $20 would be really nice. Today is the anniversary of Tiananmen Square. I didn't realize that. I should have, but I didn't realize that. All right. Beijing is arresting anyone in Hong Kong who even hints at acknowledging that it happened. Thoughts? I mean, this is the great tragedy. The great evil of what is happening in Hong Kong is that one of the freest places on planet Earth, a real testament to the power of capitalism, to the power of freedom, is basically being shut down, is basically being brought under the authoritarian regime of China. And that, whoa, Troy is in the house. Troy, thank you. That's amazing. Really, really appreciate that. There's not a whimper from anywhere in the world. The British, China is clearly violating the two-system, one nation, two-system rule that they had. And nobody cares. The British don't care. The United States hasn't said anything. Trump didn't say anything. Biden isn't saying anything. It's a complete travesty. We play around with tariffs and this and that, and here is an authoritarian regime taking over a free place, and we just do nothing, say nothing. Don't even use our bully pulpit to declare how immoral it is, how evil it is. And that's just horrific. I mean, it's now been 3 presidents. But certainly Trump and Biden are responsible for not even bringing it up. Never mind withdrawing the ambassador, bringing him home. And why hasn't the United States still not said to Hong Kong residents, these are not socialists? Why didn't Trump do this? Said to Hong Kong residents, these are pro-free market people. Come to the United States, we'll give you a green card automatically. Anybody in Hong Kong, that would piss off the Chinese to no end. Anybody in Hong Kong who wants to escape Chinese authoritarianism, we will welcome you. We'll give you a green card as soon as you come to the country. Why was this not done? Why is it still not done? We just don't care. And the anti-immigration stuff is not about, oh, they'll vote for the Democrats. It's about they're different from us. We're Americans, we don't want them. So one of the great tragedies already of the 21st century is what's happening in Hong Kong like this. 1 year. 1 year. What the Chinese have done is they used the weakness of the Trump administration and the weakness of Biden. They used COVID as a distraction, the whole COVID phenomena, and they just came in and took it. And nobody said a thing. Do you think that Biden knows the taxes stifle real economic growth? Again, the same thing as with the regulations. Yeah, somewhere in the back of his mind, he knows that. But he rationalizes it. Remember, rationalism. They rationalize, they create sophisticated excuses to push that out of consciousness. To hide that fact, not just from you, but from himself. So he doesn't hold it in his mind. I'm raising taxes, and that'll stifle economic growth. He says in his mind, I'm raising taxes, and that will reduce the debt, which will allow me to spend more money on more things, which will stimulate the economy. At least that's what Paul Krugman says, and it kind of makes sense. Okay, yeah, that's what I'm doing. K-Faxing Corp. Tiananmen Square. We know it exists, Chinese. We're not going to stop talking about it. We're not going to deny it. We're not going to pretend it never happened. We are going to remember what you did to those young Chinese students that day. We're going to remember the horrors of tanks running over people, of hundreds gunned down. So the Tiananmen Square in the days followed had to be washed down by water cannons to get the blood stains off the pavements. You will never erase the memory of Tiananmen Square. You will never erase the picture of the young man standing in front of the tank, daring it to advance. It didn't advance that day. But a day later, it sure did. That young man is in hiding in Taiwan, as far as I know. So, no, Tiananmen Square will never be forgotten. Not by anybody who values freedom in the world. And our political leaders, to hell with them. They're wimps, they're cowards. They stand on no principle. They understand no principle. Right. And it wasn't even done in the name of communism. And I don't even consider them communists. They call themselves the Communist Party, but they're just brutes. They're just authoritarians. They're as bad as communists in many respects, not in all, but in many respects. But what they did that day is pure evil. And the person who commanded it was Deng Xiaoping, who in the 10 years before that and in the 10 years after that did a lot of good things. But in this, pure evil. Pure evil. We all better take care of our own health, because with doctors being taught nonsense and Democrats pushing for government health care, we're doomed. The better doctors will prevail. We are not doomed. There will be a backlash. People won't take this seriously. People will rebel against it. We will survive this as well. Partially because of people like Barry Weiss and other people who are bringing this to the public's attention. People will stand up against this. Balcony show funding need to buy a 50-foot network cable. That's a good idea. That way I can do it from the balcony on a Ethernet wired connection. All right, how is my tooth today? It's not great. I'm going to see a doctor on Wednesday. Hopefully it'll be a little better after that, but it's not great. How's my wife today? My wife's great. Why are you asking me these questions? I don't quite know why he's asking me these questions. Yesterday it was burgers. Today it's how my tooth and my wife are. We're living in a home that's under construction. That is a challenge. Why haven't you had any tag teams, 2 versus 2 debates lately? Is it a scheduler thing? I don't particularly like I haven't done, when did I ever do a tag team debate? I'm trying to think. I haven't been invited to any, and, you know, unless it's, yeah, I don't know. I'm not, I guess I'm not, I haven't really been pushing for tag team debates. I'd like to do debates myself. Okay, we've got a $20 question. Given what I learned about fascism, I wonder if China is a modern example of a very similar system. Yeah, I think so. I think China is much more fascist than it is socialist, communist. It's much more fascist than it is communist. But it's a unique form of fascism. It's a mixture of nationalism with segments of the economy that are completely left free, and you know, and a political party that rides roughshod over free speech and over everything else, and about anybody who dissents that calls itself communist. But yeah, I think they're much more fascist than anything else in terms of the usual categories that we use. I mean, me and Leonard doing a tag team, that would be phenomenal. That would be phenomenal. Leonard and I did a few Q&As together. They were just a blast. I mean, I loved them. It was so much fun. So much fun. Yeah, that's unlikely given that he's retired. And I don't know who would we debate. Charlie asks, are you excited about the bloodbath with Vosh tomorrow? I don't know. I don't know Vosh. I'm not excited. I'm not excited. We'll just do it. From everything I hear, he's going to call me names and yell and scream. That's what people say. Fine. He'll look like an idiot doing that. I'll let him do it, and I'll identify the essence of what he is doing, and that'll be great. Shangping Corp. You're going to have to tell me one day how to pronounce that. When you search for Tank Man on Bing Images, which is the Microsoft equivalent of Google, there are no results. Try it yourself. In this instance, it's partial censorship. As such content, normal search gives results. What do you think the U.S. company is silencing such content? I think it's horrific. I think it's truly evil. Succumbing to an evil regime, rewriting history, I think is truly, 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 I think it's really, really, really bad. And good reason not to use their product. I'm looking on Google. Tank Man is everywhere. Shows everything. Let's do Bing. Bing is Microsoft. There's the image. Do it now. Go to Bing. Put in Tank Man. Put quotes between quote Tank Man quote. Put it in quotes and put Tank Man. You get the Tank Man entry in Wikipedia. You get a big photo of him standing in front of a row of tanks. News about Tank Man. You get a link to MSN, Microsoft. Okay, so they changed it. It looks like somebody pointed out to them. Okay, so here's the news article. Thanks for pointing this out. This is the value of making these things public. On Microsoft's search engine, Bing, searching for Tank Man, the iconic figure from 1989 Tiananmen Square. I'm reading from an article linked to by Microsoft, and this is MSN News, which is powered by Microsoft News. The iconic image of 1989 Tiananmen Square protests in China turned up no images, results in the United States for part of Friday. Vice was able to produce the same results in the US and heard from multiple users from other countries who ran into the same issue. Stranger still, searching Tank Man or Tiananmen Square Tank Man turned up normal search results in Bing. It's just images that were mysteriously missing. When The Verge contacted Microsoft for an explanation, it said, quote, This is due to an accidental human error, and we are actively working to resolve this. It's an unfortunately timed accident, given that June 4th is the anniversary of the student-led protest in China, and then they talk about Tiananmen Square. So whatever it was that caused somebody at Microsoft to make that decision, it was quickly overturned. And by the way, again, it was only the images. The story was still there, right? The story was still there. All right. That's good. Thanks for pointing that out and bringing that to our attention. But it's also good, again, to highlight these things and then show that that has influence. And corporations can fix. Probably somebody was either paid off by the Chinese or is influenced by Chinese in some way or another, made the human error. And Microsoft has fixed it. So good for Microsoft. What a wonderful world it would be if we could all embrace the morality of individualism. Absolutely. That would be fantastic. Are you flying the pride flag out of your balcony? I don't fly any flags out of my balcony, but I'm generally proud. And I'm a big advocate of pride as a virtue. I don't think that's what you mean, but that's okay. Yuan, glad I found your show through ARI. I admire your work. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm glad also that you found my show. I keep seeing news stories and commercials encouraging people, black and white, to invest in black-owned businesses. No mention what they do or just invest in them because they're black-owned. Yeah, I mean, that's what's going on. I didn't talk about wokeism in corporate boardrooms. I'll have to do that on a future show. But that's related to this. It's investments, it's boardrooms, it's managers, it's promotion. It's across the board now. Racism in investment and in corporate world everywhere. You have to take into account race in everything that you do. It's all that matters. Yeah, somebody verified that it takes so long to get Uber these days. Thank Trump and Biden for that. Do you think Milton Friedman and the Chicago Boys made a deal with the devil by helping the right-wing dictator Pinochet? Now Chile's become leftist again. I think, first of all, Milton Friedman never made a deal. I think to some extent the Chicago Boys did, but they were given the Chicago Boys in Chile were Chileans. They were given a free hand in Chile to change that country. They did. They succeeded. It is sad that that success was associated with a character like Pinochet, who was bad in a lot of other ways. So, yes. Why did Hank Reardon marry Lillian? Because he suffered from a mind-body dichotomy, or a work-family dichotomy, or a work-social world dichotomy. He had a certain moral perspective about what it meant to do work, how to apply his mind at work, how to live qua work. And that was primarily to be guided by reason and to be guided by his judgment. But when it came to anything social, when it came to sex, when it came to family, he abandoned his own mind. And he accepted, in the sense he was second-handed, the judgment of others, the judgment of society, whatever that is, right? The judgment of other people. He did what was accepted. He married Linda because that's what he thought he was supposed to do. It was a way to legitimize in some way his sexual urges. Sex under marriage is okay, right? It was second-handed and irrational. But that's because he had dichotomized his life. And that was his error. That was his big mistake. And that's what Francisco teaches him. That's what Francisco shows him. And Reardon changes over the book, over the novel, slowly learning and finally completely embracing the morality that drove him his work to embracing that morality for every aspect of his life. Would Howard Roark have joined the strike in Atlas? Would it make a difference if he was invited before, after he was successful? I think he would have joined the strike if he lived in the world of Atlas, and if there was a John Galt in the world, in that world. So if he literally was in the world of Atlas Shrugged, yes. Howard Roark is one of the giants of Atlas Shrugged and would have joined. He has the same, and he would have been one of the earliest to join. He basically has that same sense of life, that same focus on his own virtue. I mean, he would have gotten Galt's speech like that. I mean, what amazes me is everybody else getting it like that. Roark would have got it like that. Is there significance to whether COVID was leaked from a Chinese lab? Yes. The significance is not that it leaked from the Chinese lab. Accidents happen. The significance is the cover-up. The significance is the unwillingness of the Chinese to admit this. The significance is that they've diverted attention to other places. That's the significance. The fact that such labs exist, they exist all over the world. The United States has such labs. The fact that they're studying viruses and maybe even in some ways manipulating them is normal. That's how you study viruses, and again, that happens in American labs. The fact that it leaked is not unusual. Viruses that leaked from American labs. None, obviously, as deadly as COVID. What is really horrific is the cover-up and what that says about the Chinese regime, what it says about whether we can trust them, what it says about whether we should allow them to participate in international institutions like the World Health Organization, which I think has a valid function, but has sold its soul to the devil by basically believing everything the Chinese will tell them. So it is very significant to that. And I think if it turns out that it was a cover-up from the Chinese government, that will discredit the Chinese government more than anything else that they have done, and cause them real harm on an international scale. What are two things of significance that your wife has helped you with in your time together? This best friend Hank asks. I don't know why he's obsessed with my wife today. Two things of significance. I mean, there's so many, it's really hard because there's so many ways in which my wife and I grew up together because we got married so young. And we grew into, I was an objectivist when I met her, but she embraced the ideas very quickly. But we learned objectivism in a sense together. We interacted socially with objectivists together in that world. So many of our values we accept together. But, one significant thing she's helped me with is this idea of taking your values seriously and being passionate about it and sticking to them. And she's a perfectionist, and to her values are everything. And she won't let anything come in between them, right? And I'm much more laid back, and she's helped me, in a sense, be more passionate and more serious and more driven by values than I would have otherwise been. She's the artist. She's an artist. So she's helped me immensely with art appreciation, right? She, not only does she produce art, but she can look at art and immediately see what's good, particularly sculpture, but art more generally, what's good, what's not so good, the plastic arts, painting, sculpture. So those are aesthetic appreciation, values appreciation. I mean, crucial significant, major things that she has helped me with. Significance helped me with, yeah. All right. Yeah, I mean, amazing. Let's see. All right, last question, I think. We're almost at $1,000. So somebody want to pitch in $60, we'll get to 1,000 like that. Another show going for 400 to 1,000, just like that. Thank you again, Troy, for supporting the show. Been busy at work and moving, but thank you for the show and especially the advice. We'll reply back this evening. Have a great day. Thanks, guys. And oh, that's right, Jacob. I gave you the advice. I remember that. I hope it was helpful. It was an interesting question. There we go. Best Fit Hank is getting us to what, $998. Somebody do $2 just to clear this up. I hope that's a response to my to my response to your question. All right, everybody. Here's what's going to happen. The plan is, now you know I always can renege on my plans. Ooh, I did the math wrong. Is that right? Yeah, it's only $992, so we need $10. What was it? Yes, this is the plan. The plan is, Shazbat says this is 1,000 is just a number. Yeah, but it's a big number. The plan is to do a show tomorrow at 3 p.m., to do a show on Sunday at 3 p.m., and then we'll go from there. In addition to the show at 3 p.m. tomorrow, we have the debate at 8 p.m. tomorrow with Vosh, which I'm told is going to be quite vocal and antagonistic. What else? That's all I wanted to tell you. Oh, we got one more Super Chat question. And two $10, so we're over 1,000. That's great. So 3 p.m. and 8 p.m. and then the next day 3 p.m. And then I'm actually doing an interview for an Australian podcast. And I think it's live. So I'm doing it at 8 p.m. because that's a reasonable hour in Australia, like in the morning. So I'm doing a podcast in Australia for those of you, for Troy and for Corey. That'll be on Sunday night. What's the podcast? Let me just give you the podcast name for those of you who might want to find it. Whoops, where is my calendar? There's the calendar. Podcast, this is going to be, I guess it's going to be streamed live. Well, no, it's going to be recorded on Zoom. It's Julius Killerby's Conversations. This will be Julius Killerby's conversation with Yaron Brook. 10 a.m. Australian time. He's in Melbourne. So that'll be on Sunday. So a busy weekend for me. You guys have been fantastic the last two shows. We've raised over $2,000 in the last two shows. So thank you. That puts me in the mood to work hard over the weekend and get everything done. So that's great. So 4 different things this weekend. Oh, by the way, for those of you who are interested, yesterday I did an interview with Michael Shermer, the skeptic, Michael Shermer. So I did not get your $20 question. Oh, here it is. While there are many people hating on billionaires, entrepreneurs like Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates, etc., they do not seem to hate Elon Musk. Is he a huge charity giver? No, I don't think he's a huge charity giver at all. I think Elon Musk is just cool. I think Elon Musk is also does stuff that's cool from their perspective. He builds electric cars. He talks about global warming. He's got that leftist cool factor going for him in a way that these others don't. He also, and by the way, there's a lot of people who hate Elon Musk on the left. A lot of people. They hate his arrogance. They hate other things. But yeah, there was the same thing with Steve Jobs. they didn't quite have the same attitude to Steve Jobs. There was some factor about the way he presented himself that overcame the fact that he was a billionaire, overcame the fact that he was very focused on business and self-interest. And Steve Jobs didn't do any charity, and Apple didn't do any charity. And yet people still liked him because he exuded a certain charisma that, and I think Elon Musk does the same thing, that overcomes their general hatred of success and billionaires. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for the support. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Don't forget to support the show on a monthly basis at youronbrookshow.com/support. Thank you to all the super chatters. Don't forget, you can also support the show on Patreon and on Subscribestar. And I didn't see a $10 question, so I don't know. I'm missing questions here. I don't see your question, sorry, about casual sex. So next time, just put it into the chat, and I will answer it. So I apologize. All right, everybody. Thanks. Have a great night. Have a great weekend. See you all. You don't have to use $10 next time. Next show you're on, just ask a question and remind me that, I don't know what the question is right now. I can't answer it because you're basically saying it was a question about casual sex. What was the question? I can't go back in the chat. Let me see if I can find it because, sorry. Okay, I missed it. Okay, there it is. I'm new to objectivism. I like almost everything, but I wanted to pursue casual sex with many partners in coming years. Is objectivism anti-casual sex? Objectivism is anti-treating sex casually. Sex is too profound a value, too important, too great a pleasure to throw it away on random, repeated, continuous one-night stands or casual. Now, once in a while, okay, in the right environment, in the right mood, in the right context, nothing wrong with casual sex. But to have a goal, I'm just going to have a bunch of casual sex in the next few months. No, it's inconsistent with what sex represents spiritually. It's inconsistent with what you should be pursuing, which is sex with somebody that represents a value for you, which is much more valuable, much more intense, much more fulfilling than casual sex. You should be pursuing that, and the casual sex probably detracts from your ability to find somebody to have sex with who is a real value to you. And I'm not talking about love and your soulmate or anything like that, but somebody that's a value to you, somebody that you connect at some kind of deep level. Again, I'm not rejecting casual sex completely, but not as a methodology, not as a goal, not as what you do in life. As something that you might do occasionally. Yes, sex represents something immensely spiritual, in connecting with another person at that depth, at that level of intimacy, at that level of pleasure. But intimacy is the key here. You're turning a physical act into something that is unbelievably spiritual. Sex is not mechanical. Stop. Sex is not mechanical. And it's a shame if that's the only way you've experienced sex. Sex is deeply spiritual because you're connecting with another human, physically connecting. You're entering, as a male, you're entering another human being. As a female, you're being entered by another human being. That has immense psychological input and has an impact on the pleasure and on the intimacy of the moment and everything involved. So, yeah, I'm not against casual sex as casual, but I'm against it as a goal. I'm against just sex. I'm against us not striving for the best sex possible. which is part of a best life possible. Yeah, you have to value the other person at some level for it to be comfortable and for it to be good. And the more you value the other person, the more comfortable, the more intimate, the more good it becomes. The more you can share. All right. Thanks, everybody. Good questions. And I will see you all hopefully tomorrow if everything works out. Definitely tomorrow because I'm definitely doing the debate. Hopefully I'll also do a show at 3 o'clock. All right, everybody. Have a great